crush, no foreign claim. Strong and free.
Okay, now you can. Okay.
Free. We rise as one in unity. No tax can crush, no foreign claim. Our fire burns bright. We own this flame. Feel the pride.
I had to do it again because I have put in a whole week of work. I have been researching this stuff for so long. What happened now? Because this is important to me being a Detroiter. So can you hear me? Now I done lost my notes. What's going on? Oh my gosh. Can you hear me now? Okay. So now I done lost my notes. So I don't even know what this is about. Stop sharing. Okay, good. Sorry about that. I had no idea. And I was so deep into what I was talking about. I did not now I can't find my notes. What is going on? This is crazy. But anyways, I'm Lisa Davis, the trusted banker, and I am here struggling now because now I can't find my notes. I just did the whole thing and you couldn't hear me. Now I'm trying to do it again and I cannot find my notes. So this is crazy. Oh my gosh. Where are my notes? So how y'all doing? Anyways, I wanted to talk about what was going on between Canada and the tariff war and all the things that Trump keeps talking about as far as the tariff war and how it's affecting just regular folks that live, here in Detroit and in Michigan. We had a rally this last weekend that we got together on. Well, I wasn't there, but I saw the videos that showed that we were on the Detroit River, standing on those banks, Canada on one side, Michigan on the other side. And if you grew up in Detroit or you know anything about the relationship that we have in Detroit with our Canadian neighbors, we have a great relationship with them. And so it's really disheartening to see what's going on right now as far as with the conversations that Trump is having about Canada and the tariff war. And so I had all my notes ready and I had all these things to talk about, and now I can't find my notes. So this might be a little bit different now. But what I want to talk about first is the importance of understanding how this all got started, because this didn't just start right now. This started during Trump's first time in office in 2020 and 2018. And so I want to talk about that a little bit first because it kind of is important to understand how we got here. And I'm a big believer in understanding. I have to understand, why we are where we are, because you got to read in between the lines. And so first I want to talk about Canada's supply chain management system and this policy that Trump and others have called unfair. And so here's the truth, that it was not designed to cheat the US. It was built to protect Canadian farmers from being wiped out by global agribusiness. So Canada controls their production to prevent oversupply and price crashes. And so the tariffs that Trump keeps yelling about, which Canada charges us 200% in tariffs, they've been overtaxing us, they've been unfair to us, they've been doing too much. Those are like 270% tariffs to keep their market stable. This is the way that they protect their Canadian dairy farmers to earn a living wage without relying on government subsidies, so that they don't overdo with our gluttonous selves. They don't oversell, they don't overproduce, they don't go over the restrictions and the limitations that the USMCA has put on how much we can import from Canada. This is actually a system that the United States uses as well. So it's kind of ironic that we're complaining about it because this is what you do to protect your other industries. We use it to protect our other industries like sugar. So why are we attacking Canada for what we do ourselves? So Trump promised the USMCA would be a game changer. The reality is that this economic impact was barely a blip. In 2018, during Trump's first term, we found out that he wanted to leave NAFTA and he formed a new relationship with Canada and Mexico. It's called the USMCA. So through the USMCA, he got different he created the U.S. International Trade Commission and projected the U.S. economy would grow by 0.06 per year. Now that's a small amount to go in and brag about with our trade partners. 0.06 is like 6/100ths. Normally, our economy grows. We look for job growth around 2.2 to 3% annually. So the deal's effect was negligible. And the jobs he promised that were going to come were 176,000 jobs over 6 years, which is about $29,000 jobs a year. And that's really a small feat. So this wasn't that great, but Trump sold this to the public. It was a modest update to the NAFTA with a lot of political hype. So beyond the economies, there's something deeper at stake here, and this is the unique relationship between our communities. For example, during 9/11, the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel became a lifeline, helping Americans stranded in Canada to get home. Every year, our cities come together for fireworks over the river, celebrating what connects us. The shared economy, the auto industry relies on parts crossing border multiple times before a car is finished, and thousands of families have roots on both sides. If you are from Michigan or Detroit, it's almost what's it called when they have those rites of passage? Like turning 19 in Michigan, you go to Canada because the legal age of everything in Canada is 19. So it's almost like I don't know anybody that doesn't do it. When you turn 19, you go to Canada. Like I've been going to Canada back and forth all my life. So this is also very disheartening for me. It's kind of personal because I hate to see what it's doing to our Canadian neighbors, making them look like the bad guy when really it was just it was the deal that Trump put together in his first term. So I want to talk a little bit about how this works. So when we talk about trade deals like the USMCA, it's easy to get lost in percentages and tariffs, but the real story isn't the numbers, it's the lives of the people that these policies actually affect. So like dairy farmers in Michigan, like Jim Kettering, this is a third generation farmer who was promised the USMCA would open doors for his business when it was formed in 2018. The reality, while the deal did grant U.S. producers slightly more access to Canada, about 3.6% of their dairy market, up from just 1% under NAFTA, it wasn't the game changer many had hoped for. For small farmers already struggling with consolidation and rising costs, the extra sliver of market access barely made a dent. Meanwhile, political fights over tariffs left many feeling like pawns in a much larger game. And on the other side of the border, in places like Windsor, Ontario, workers in Canada's dairy industry see things very differently. They rely on their country's supply chain management system, a policy that stabilizes prices and protects domestic farmers from being undercut by cheaper imports. So when U.S. leaders call Canada's tariffs unfair, they're not just arguing over trade rules, they're challenging a system that keeps entire communities employed. For workers like Mario LeBlanc, a cheese production line employee, this isn't about protectionism, it's about survival. And there's also the auto industry, where the USMCA's new wage rules were supposed to level the playing field. This is the deal Trump put into place in 2018. The agreement required that 40 to 45% of auto content be made by workers earning at least $16 an hour. So aiming to discourage companies from moving jobs to Mexico for cheap labor. But the results have been mixed. While some automakers invested in U.S. plants, others simply automated more or found loopholes. For workers like Derek Hale, a UAW member in Detroit, the promise of more jobs never fully materialized, just more empty talk. So the bottom line is that trade deals like the USMCA are often sold as big wins, but for the people who live with the consequences, the changes are rarely so simple. The US and Canada has always been more than just trading partners. We are neighbors with deep economic and cultural ties. When these agreements turn into political weapons, it's not just the markets that suffer, it's the workers, it's the farmers, and the families who depend on that relationship. And the truth is, no one here sees Canada as the enemy. When the trade policy becomes more about scoring points and solving problems, real people pay the price, and a cost, and that's a cost no tariff can measure. So what really changed with the USMC, right? The real impact on people behind these percentages. There are real communities. Michigan dairy farmers got minimal new opportunities while facing the same corrupt consolidation. Canadian dairy workers fear losing their livelihood if supply management is dismantled, and auto workers saw little growth despite wages and wage requirements. In 2018, when Trump put this deal together, he had to do a huge bailout for farmers. Let me show you. I don't know if anybody remembers this. I didn't really remember this. Trump administration plans 12 billion in farm aid to offset the tariffs. These are the tariffs he did in 2018. So if he did these tariffs in 2018 and he still had to offset the tariffs with 12 billion, that's a huge amount of money. This is July 24th, 2018. The Trump administration is coming to the aid of farmers hurt by its own hardline trade policies. I feel like we're there again, which is another reason why I wanted to talk about this. And I took it took over a week for me to get all my facts and everything together, which is why I wanted to redo the video because it is important to me. It's personal because I'm across the water. But, the money comes after farmers, especially soybean growers, felt the brunt of retaliatory tariffs placed on agriculture by China and other nations that the Trump administration have penalized with tariffs on imports. It's almost like idiocracy, right? If you can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and think you're going to get new results. I really feel like I'm just a little concerned that it's just not going to work out that great this time, right? China, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico were all hit by U.S. levies on imports, including steel and aluminum, and retaliated by placing their own tariffs on U.S. agriculture exports. The funny thing about the $12 billion is that I was reading another article, and it was like nobody really said anything. It almost went under the gun. Like nobody was aware that this was going on and that Trump was paying out $12 billion to subsidize the farmers due to the fact that he tariffed steel. And when he tariffed steel, it tanked the farmer economy here, where he had to subsidize them because it messed everything up. So I want to get back to my So this slide that I was talking about, so what this shows is the NAFTA agreements that we had with the USA and Canada in 2018 before Trump renegotiated it into the USMCA. And so 1%, we were able to get 1% of imports with the NAFTA deal. That was increased to 3.6%, but it was still a restriction. If you went over the quota that Canada gave you, you have to pay 270% tariffs. That's the same for the NAFTA agreement as it is for the current USMCA agreement. And then the pricing systems or Class 7 pricing hurt U.S. milk back in 2018. So we changed it to the USMCA. Class 7 is abolished, and this is replaced with looser rules. And again, U.S. tariffs on Canada. In NAFTA, they were low, about 5% average for Canadian dairy. And in the USMCA, it was unchanged. So the U.S. did not retaliate. The next thing I wanted to talk about was what most Americans don't realize about those Mexican-made cars that Trump wants to tariff. They're actually packed with American value. So let me show you how this works. The American steel is made here in America and shipped to Mexican factories. 40% of Mexican car steel comes from U.S. mills in Indiana and in Ohio. So the U.S. electronics and parts are made in Michigan and shipped to Mexico. These electronic parts are the dashboards. So every Mexican assembled Ford contains about $10,000 worth of US made components. What this means is that the engineering and profits, the engineers, Detroit engineers, and the designing and all these things are made here, paid for here, and then sent to Mexico to build the SUVs and everything else. So 60% of profits from Mexican cars flow back to the US headquarters. And when Trump threatens a 200% tariff on Mexican cars, he's not punishing Mexico. He's shooting our own economy in the foot. And here, what dies first is US steel workers. Mexican factories would buy Brazilian steel instead of American steel. Michigan part makers, 150,000 US auto suppliers' jobs would be at risk. And American consumers, that $30,000 truck you want to buy would now be $60,000. So this isn't theory. Right now, Mexican factories are the reason your local part plant is still open. Tariff them and the layoffs start here first. So the question is, or the statement is, before we blow up the trade deal, maybe we should understand how trade actually works. Oh my. So I wanted to talk about Canada's control production to prevent oversupply, 176,000 jobs, the Detroit Windsor border. Yes, the US has run a trade deficit with Mexico since NAFTA, especially in autos. But here's why Trump doesn't say many Mexican cars are made with US parts. The Detroit 3 builds 1.5 million vehicles annually in Mexico using steel, electronics, and engineering. Slapping tariffs on them would hurt US auto suppliers first. Our trade balance with Canada is even more, but Trump still attacks their dairy policies. The US actually exports more to Canada than China, Japan, and the UK combined. So let's say Trump goes nuclear with those 200% tariffs. What's the fallout? The fallout again, a $20,000 car that used to be 20,000 will now be 60,000. Mexico could retaliate by taxing American corn, pork, and gas. Iowa farmers and Texas oil workers would pay the price. Inflation would hit every store, from avocados to appliances. Prices would jump overnight. The Fed might hike interest rates, and that would crush home buyers. And the auto industry, companies like GM and Ford rely on Mexican plants to stay competitive. Forced to raise prices, they'll lose sales to foreign brands and cut US jobs. So this isn't hypothetical. We saw it in 2018, and here we are again. So in truth, Mexico and Canada are not our enemies. They are our customers, our suppliers, and our partners. And when politicians gamble with that relationship for headlines, it's not foreign CEOs who suffer. It's auto workers in Ohio, dairy farmers in Wisconsin, families trying to make ends meet. Trade policy should be about making life better for everyday people, not creating villains for a campaign speech. So that's what I wanted to talk about. My name is Lisa Davis. I am the trusted banker, and I will talk to y'all again the next time. All right. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.